I'm going to go quickly over the last session.
So interesting titles with no jargon. Remember that the audiences aren't necessarily people working in recruitment. We have both active and passive job seekers, so it's best for us not to use things like the SPC example. Now that was probably the most exaggerated example that we have, but even things like C&I would avoid using C&I. Use commerce and industry if you must, but I do question how many people outside of recruitment understand what commerce and industry does mean. Context. So I should know from looking at a title roughly what it's going to be about, so that I'm either interested to click in there or I don't click into a blog with false expectations. So a really good exercise for you to do: go to your View All Articles page and then go through the first 3 or 4 pages and look at how many blogs that, if you didn't work for Morgan McKinley or you hadn't seen those blogs already, you would know what they are just on the title. It's quite fascinating in some respects when I'm looking through, because obviously I don't work with your consultants, I don't see the blogs until you're on your site, and that's the first way that I get to see them. I go to your View All Articles page, and if I have no idea what they're about, I click in because I want to see if I can correct that, but an actual user wouldn't, so it defies the point of having the blog. Don't use all capitals. In English, that's a convention of shouting, and check capitalization if you need to. We have some really weird and wonderful grammar uses across Morgan McKinley, and that shows up in that title. And then, of course, you've got the tools underneath.
So adding imagery, needless to say, it gives a user a glimpse of what the blog is about. It helps to add context, and it draws attention. It's a visual aid to a blog.
Now, it's your real estate, it's your window dressing. So this even works in things like exact target and social media. Now, there are different exact target email templates. You'll remember that the Talent Insights ones had more imagery than in the insights that you have. But when you think of a shop, for example, the way that they draw people in is to have these fantastic displays. If you didn't know what a shop did, you walk past the shop window, they would have on display the kind of things that they sell, and you would therefore know, so that's context. They would have an attractive display, so therefore you're more likely to go into the shops. If you think of all these big shopping centres, Harrods, Lafayette, and so on, that have these magnificent Christmas displays and so on, and that's what attracts people to go inside to the shop. Equally, that's what we want to do to attract people onto our website.
And I've used here some examples. So this one here is quite old now, but I've gone on to this particular website, and you can see I've used an image of Eeyore there, and I've done it deliberately just to show how each one of these blogs by itself, it's not a big deal, it's not the end of the world if you do use a grey type image, but this is the home page. So arrive on the home page, I've got 3 very grey, typical business, boring stock images, and next to that grey video. Now, the Galileo sites are a move on from that. There's been a deliberate introduction of colour, but just goes to show if that's kind of image that you pick, it will show up. And when people arrive on our sites, okay, they arrive in different places, different landing pages, but our home pages are amongst the top most visited pages on our sites month after month, and equally in our emails as well, depending on what imagery and where you use it. There's a reason why Eeyore is grumpy and grey. I've got here on the French site as well the same thing. So bearing in mind this is marketing who decide what goes on the home page. They've chosen the blogs, probably haven't looked at what's on there, and as local marketing, it's you who gets to decide what goes on your homepage. You get to promote what goes on there, what that says about us, and so on. So go and have a look. If it's all grey, then change it for something better. That's the first experience that many people will have of us.
And I've got here, this one is from the Japan site, I believe. So Yumi, actually, you're very good. I've said this before, at choosing good imagery. And there's Winnie the Pooh on the side. So I've used them. Yes, it's a little bit funny to put them in, but it goes to show just from a visual context, there's a reason why Eeyore is the grumpy character and he's grey, and then you've got Happy Winnie the Pooh and he's in bright colours. So you can see the difference between those. Imagine arriving on that website or that website. This one's a lot more inviting to a user. And at the top there, you'll see as the subtitle, it says, use exciting, bright images. Now, if we go into the next one, I've actually changed the tagline to use striking images. I don't necessarily think it has to be bright stuff, but certainly something that's striking. You can see that cybersecurity one is actually quite dark in some areas, but it's striking and it's got context. Similarly, who'd ever done this one up for the commerce and industry, accountancy and finance? It's not a bright image, but it gives you, it certainly would stand out, it gives you context. Do avoid using images with white backgrounds because they just don't show up well on our site, what with the page color around it. Also, just going back to last week, you can see that middle one could have a much better title. It's not very bad. It's got key phrases in it. It's got a date and so on, but it doesn't actually say anything about recruitment in there, so it's lacking some context. Now, let's have a look at these. So this is a blog that I'd seen shared on LinkedIn on our company page, and it piqued my interest because it was about something different. It was about Pokemon. So I thought, oh, I'll go in and have a look at that blog. And you can see I made a change to the image and I made a change to the leading text. In fact, that leading text could be shorter still, but we'll go through leading text in another session. Now, which one do you think got the most engagement online? So I saw it when it was originally posted, and then I changed it and I shared it for the same time, the same day, the following week. Which do you think got the most engagement online on LinkedIn and why? Cool. Here's a screenshot of the shares. So you can see the top one there, when it went out, went to nearly 8,000 people would have or could have seen it on their feed. If you look at the bottom below, that's about 2,700 people less saw it on their feed, but yet it's got twice as many clicks, so therefore it follows that it's got over twice the engagement. So you can see there were some things I changed in the blog, I'm sure, but if you only change the image, that's the kind of difference that it makes. So how long do you think that would take you to change an image? Say, for example, you had a blog and you had to put it up fairly quickly. You can put an image in temporarily, but do update it because that's the kind of difference that you get. We have consultants sharing blogs, obviously. We will share blogs on social media and they'll be used in various exact targets. So by making that few minutes change, that's the kind of difference that you do to your traffic. So you get much more reward for very minimum effort. Can anybody else tell me, in terms of that post, why it might have got more click-throughs apart from the image? So in here, there's a few reasons. So a couple of you there had said that it was a vibrant image. Second one is context. So one of my favorite words, context. This one is an office image, just general one. Doesn't really tell me anything apart from that it's probably aimed at business workers or something about work. Below, it's about Pokemon, and I've put a Pokemon type image. I haven't stolen an image, I haven't used copyright. I searched Pokemon and found something that shows me that it's Pokemon related. So there's context, and there's also a teaser line. So if you just post a blog on LinkedIn or Twitter and you don't put a teaser line, you're not going to get as much click-throughs or engagement as if you put it. So it's only a short one. Imagine if you were as sought after as a rare Pokemon. 3 ways to get under the radar of key hiring managers. So I have had to read the blog or scan read it to know that there are 3 ways. But if you put nothing, or if you just put the blog title, you are not going to get as much engagement. So again, that's probably another minute, maybe 2 minutes worth of effort. And by doing that, I have increased the engagement. So particularly when you have a piece of marketing content that you have worked on, you have created, so be it surveys, white papers, infographics, employment monitors, this is the kind of thing that you really should consider. I know a lot of those things tend to have branded banners, but when you share it, do it with a good teaser as well, and you will double the engagement for the few minutes that you are posting that for. So we've got striking images there, we've got context, and in terms of sharing, I put a teaser, and that doubled the engagement. I've got another one here. So this is a very, very bright image. I'm not saying use colourful cartoon ones for every single one, but Derren Brown is a well-known hypnotist and mentalist in the UK. So he does a lot of TV shows and so on. He's quite well known. And the picture was this typical grey one. We use this so much. There's this and this French-looking woman that's leaning across a desk that are just so funny. They're quite stereotypical grey office images. I hate this image, so if you see it on your side, please change it. I just wanted to give it context. It was quite an interesting way of writing about interviewing, so I just changed it to something that made sense. It's a bit of a quirky blog, so it made sense to have a bit more of a quirky image. And again, I shared it on LinkedIn. So I've put a teaser. The title is slightly different. That's to do with something I did in the meta tags, again, to give it a bit more context. And you can see that the engagement is over 1%. So I think you all have admin rights on the LinkedIn company page. What you're looking for is above 1% engagement. LinkedIn says that 1% is good, it's average. The top 50 companies on LinkedIn have an engagement rate on average of 0.5%. So if you're getting 1%, that's great, and this one's got over 1%. Just because it's different, you can imagine when you see that. Even if you went back and say you found a generic type blog or blog that could be used again, change the image and reshare it on LinkedIn, or ask your consultants to reshare. So if you've got next to no blogs or no blogs for that week, then you can still send an email around your office saying, this is a great blog, a golden oldie, you could even call it that, or on your share, say you have like a share Wednesday or share Thursday, whatever it is, you've got all the new blogs, pick one old blog and add it to that list. Make a couple of updates and then ask them to reshare it, and you'll be surprised at what that brings into your site. And if you did that every week or every fortnight, with very little effort, you're bringing more and more people to your website. I'm going to move on to the library there. So when you move over to Galileo, there'll be a little less of this because they transfer over the image. But this is more in relation to things like, have you got a press release banner? Have you got an event banner? So the generic ones that we do use over and over again, you don't need to re-upload those. If you look at these URLs, so duplication is not just in terms of text on a page. It's everything on a website. Google sees our website as written code. It doesn't see them like we are. And it will see duplications in URLs. So if you had two blog titles with the same title and they had the same web address, it thinks that's the same content. So here you can see the first time this was uploaded, it was actually the second one. So, and then the second time was with this 0. Another time it's been uploaded, but it doesn't have the underscores in between, so it's got this percentage 20. So it's 3 times that file is duplicated. And then when you look in the back end, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples of the same image. So you've got a library that pretty much looks like these photos thrown on the floor. And don't forget, you may be the principal person working on blogs, but one day you might not work for Morgan McKinley, and there are also other people who do work on those. It might be Mahe, it might be me. For things that you already have there, you can search. So if you go to upload media, go to library, search for CV, especially if you want a temporary image. Say you've requested one, you can't wait for it, search to see what you already have. And so just keep the back end of your site a bit tidy. If it's a mess, Google will recognize that your site's a mess. You can also replace files. So there is a facility on there.
When you go to edit, you can edit your alt text, you can edit title text, and then replace file, choose, okay? And then you can upload it with the latest version of that. Say you had the data protection one and it didn't fit properly, you resized it and then you wanted to re-upload it, then press replace file there and it will go over the old file.
Where you should use different images is when you've got blogs coming up. So with this use of CV, when the UK site went live, on their CV tips section of blogs, there was, say, 9 on the page and 7 of them had the same image. So don't use the same image all the time for blogs that don't have a branded banner. So I hope that makes sense. If it's branded banner or something that you do use over and over, there's no need to keep uploading it, find it in there. If it's something like a normal blog, then do find an appropriate image for it. Use good file names. It might seem a little bit boring, but here's quite a good example. So if you were to search on Google for an image, if you search for cat with a ball of yarn or ice cream, what comes up in image search, the chances are that that image will have the name of what you're looking for, and that all contributes on the page towards SEO. So if you were writing a blog about CVs, if your file name for the image is called CVs, that's another plus point towards that page, Google recognizing, oh, the title is about CVs, the meta description is about CVs, the image is about CVs, CVs and resumes are mentioned 3 or 4 times in the body of the text. So again, it doesn't take a lot. So in this example, the image here is called kitten with yarn ball. That's a lot more informative than image 23. So it's telling Google this is what it's actually about. And I've got an example. I'm going to look here at alt text and title text. We're looking more about the SEO behind them.
It does tell you when you upload an image, and just to remind you, so an alternative text is used, or it's called an alt tag, is used both by screen readers. So that would be if somebody that was blind were using an internet page, it reads what that is, but also search engines do use it. So it is very important for SEO. Title text is a bit like the tooltip that we use in emails, for example. So when a user hovers over, it's that yellow tab that comes up. And I've got a quote here from Yoast at the top. So they are an SEO company that provide a tool usually used on WordPress sites. But just to quote them, Google places a relatively high value on alt text to determine what is on the image, but also to determine the topic of surrounding text. So by filling in that one field when you're uploading an image, you're doing a lot to help the searchability of your particular page. So not one to miss. Which of these would you use for your alt text? The keywords here for number 1, would you put in number 2, the name of the blog, or would you put in 3, something that describes what the image is? 1 or 3, okay. Number 3, 1 or 3, perfect. And the answer is usually 3. So you could do 2, but I would actually say 3. So when I gave this webinar to APAC, I did say 2 or 3. And I'll show you why this is. Actually, I hadn't realised that this would come up, but it's very useful. So you could put the name of the blog. That I think that's what most people do from what I've seen in the back end of blogs. But it's better to describe what the actual image is. The top one is spam use of keywords, so we would avoid that one wherever possible, so 2 or 3. And the reason why I say 3 over the blog name was the one that I just opened up here. So they've obviously used an image. If you see, this one's about the GDPR, so it's about the upcoming EU data legislation. And so what they've done is they've gone in and they've looked for data as an image. But this was obviously used for a blog with that name. Yeah, moment of truth. Yeah, see, so when this image was first uploaded, they used the blog name. And so they took this and they put that as the alt text, which meant when this blog was then used and they searched image library for another data protection, the alt text for it was actually the name of another blog. So it would make more sense to call the alt text data protection, and then it shows up as data protection for this one and data protection for that one. And it shows, again, Google what it's about. It's not duplication in that sense, because the blog that it's on is about data protection, and email, this one is about data protection and GDPR. So it's helping build up a field of content around data protection. So it's showing that we know about it and that we've got multiple angles on the same theme, if that makes sense, I hope. So don't use the blog name. So it'd actually be better to rework that as data protection, and we'll just call that data protection as well, because that's what it is. That's what both blogs will be about. I've got here just an example of a blog. I think in the background of this one, they'd put tablet with content is king written on it, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to write something very long. You don't need to literally describe that there's a cup of coffee in the image, just why you've chosen it. So content is king, or in this case, probably content marketing. And again here, so you wouldn't say it's a black exclamation mark and a black diamond on a yellow background is actually meant to indicate a warning. We spoke about file names. I took a screenshot here of our Shutterstock request. When you request an image, you don't have to call it the name that it's called on here. So taking an extreme example, we've got here new development and renewal as a business concept, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot that have the word concept. You don't need to include them. The reason why you're asking for that image is to go with a particular type of blog. Now, unless you rename that file name, when you upload that now, that will be the file name. It'll be really, really long. So take this example at the top, pharmacist scanning medicine with barcode reader. What the person really wanted there was just an image of a pharmacist. So it's okay to just call that pharmacist. That's fine. You've got here beautiful row line of different coloured alcohol cocktails. Just call that cocktails or businessman, etc. You've got some good ones here. So network, back to work, onboarding process, Cork City. This one is incredibly long. So when you request your images, don't use 5, 10, 15 words. Just call it what you want it to stand for. So it could be 1 to 3 words. You don't really need much longer than that. And that means that as soon as you get given the file by Nidin or Prabod, you don't have to worry about renaming it. It's named something that makes sense anyway. Also, if you think in terms of whether it's you or someone else who does a search on Google Drive for your web library for another image, if I wanted an image of a tablet, for example, and I search in the web library, it's unlikely that that is going to come up necessarily because there's so many words in there, it's lost. The reason I've included this is because I did this a few weeks ago at someone's computer, or they saw me do it, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So I thought I would share. So this goes back to if you need an image and you don't have time to request one, or you're waiting on one, there's a very, very simple way to search Google Drive for them. First of all, this drop down is your best friend, and it's not just for images. Say, for example, I was looking for a document that Julian owned, then I can look for owned by that, roughly what was included in it, when was it modified, so I know who might have worked on it in the last 3 months. So it's a really, really helpful way of finding stuff and navigating. Now, if you wanted to find a photo or image, you do that, and you can notice at the top, I don't even bother using this drop down now because I know that the way to search is type : image, and then I want something that includes the word, let's say interview. And lo and behold, every image comes up with interview. If I just typed interview at the top, every single Google Doc, spreadsheet, everything would. So it's just an easier way of me seeing what we have. So that's just a very easy way of looking for something you could do. Let's look at something a bit more obscure. Telephone. It also uses machine learning. It's quite interesting because you'll see this doesn't have, you can see the file name there, it doesn't have the name telephone in the file name, but it's got a picture of a telephone in it. So Google Drive is known to bring it up, so it's quite helpful in that way.
And now to another area of imagery. So there isn't too much of this, to be honest, but I do see it across the site. So you can see at the bottom of the blog on the left that I've highlighted, it's got image courtesy of the Independent, so the newspaper. And I actually once got a Google alert that said Morgan McKinley, and it was on an online HR magazine. So I went there and thought, oh, we've got a mention. They're referring to a piece of our research, or it's a piece of PR. And actually, it was nothing about us. It just had a banner, and underneath the banner it said image courtesy of Morgan McKinley. I was like, it's not our courtesy. We didn't say you could use it. We paid for our Shutterstock license. You've Googled it and you've stolen it. So that's essentially what this is. So imagine Sarah or Maura create something. So they spend 3 hours designing a banner. We put it up on our site. Then somebody else Googles something like events, and they take that banner and use it on their site. They've stolen Sarah and Maura's work. So internally, even on internal presentations, I'll nick stuff from Google, but this is really why we can't steal stuff. We are a company, it's not a personal blog. Even if it's a personal blog, you would be liable. And yes, it's unlikely you would get fined out and you would get sued, but you could be. And it's the premise behind it. It's not ethical to steal something that somebody else has paid for, or somebody else has made, etc. The Telegraph would have paid a photographer or photo agency for it. There is a reason why when we use Shutterstock, we are not to click editorial, we have to click non-editorial, because the editorial images are more expensive and this is an editorial image. So what you can do is you can find something similar. So this woman, I don't know who she was, but apparently she's an Irish boxer and has done well in the Olympics. So all I did was I searched female boxer. With the images that came up, I might put back of head or something, and I've replaced that. So you can still see, when you see that, if you know who Katie Taylor is and you see a boxer, you're more likely to click on that anyway. The title for this blog is really not very good. It's just a statement. It doesn't tell me what the blog is about or why I would click on it or what it's got to do with recruitment. So that's an example of a really not very good blog title there. I would have no idea why I would need to click on that. It's like saying, Louise James, global content marketer. Like, so what? Okay, I'm not famous like an Olympic champion, but what are you trying to say about that? So there's a way to get around using images. Also another example, so I said there the back of the head of the boxer, a back of a head trick. So you can see here I was working on football content last year, and there was this blog on the bottom, and there were two names of footballers I know next to nothing about football, so I had to Google them. So you can see at the top, I Googled them probably to find out the colour of their shirt. In this instance, I got to see pictures of the two of them together. So I don't ever spend more than a few minutes, unless really, on searching for blogs. And I managed to find two guys holding a football that, because you can't see their face, look roughly like the guys in the picture. So if you see that, you know who those footballers are, then it gives so much more context. So you can find people that look similar, like I could have searched brunette boxer, for example. You can find footballers, what colour is their shirt, popular culture. So I typed in Pokemon. You are not going to get a fantastic choice because we have non-editorial, but you can. There's a Mad Men example coming up in the TV series. Company, so we're not allowed to use a company logo unless we have their permission. But what are they known for? Can you find something like their logo? And I've also put in a video here about how to use free stock images. You do have to put at the bottom a reference to their license. And so if you need a good image or you need one quickly, you can always use free ones, but you do have to use them properly. So I would watch this in your spare time. And here's some more examples. So there was one about Apple. I searched for the apple. I'm not going to actually get a fruit apple. I mean, I could do, but I thought that one looked better. Glassdoor. I think this one's a really, really good one. Glassdoor, their icon is a green door. So if you search green door, there might have not been a green door, but there's a door in a green area. It makes sense enough. You can understand why it's used. This one is about Adele and Beyonce. There's a microphone that's perfectly fine. It gives the gist away. You don't have to nick a picture of Beyonce or Adele. This one at the top is quite interesting. We had a really, really good blog, and this blog turned into an event, and then it turned into a white paper. So somebody spoke to a man called Chris Weiler. So he used to be in Coca-Cola, and then he worked for a company called Soap and Glory. So you can see their products there, and they're like toiletries. It's a really well-known brand in the UK, and it was about about accounting. So this guy had been a financial director and was now a CFO. So we did a social media campaign around it, which means that we did need to take a bit of time to look for images that were striking and a range of different images. So we got what the colour was on here, the hex colour, with just a clicker tool, which is really easy on the internet. And we searched, and we've got a guy at a desk, so he's meant to be an accountant, in that pink, so it matches. And then Coca-Cola, so I searched Coca-Cola, and look what came up. So you notice on Shutterstock, they hide the image because they're not allowed to show it in a non-editorial image. But everyone looking at that knows that's supposed to be a Coca-Cola can, and equally a ring pull as well. So there are so many different ways around it. You don't have to be particularly creative. And then you've got at the bottom that Barbie one, which was very obviously stolen. And again, so we've got referencing popular culture. I couldn't really reshare this because it wasn't evergreen content, in that it was very specific to a particular time. In fact, it was just a job ad, and this was called Calling All Mad Men Fans. And you can see why the banner was used for advertising, but I just searched Mad Men, and there you go. So that's quite a dark image. It's not bright, but it's striking. It gives context and so on, and if you were a Mad Men fan, you're more likely to notice it than a very generic whiteboard image. I'll just put a note there about evergreen content. If something is written and it's very time specific, whether it's a consultant or you, that should be shared as much as is realistic and without bombarding during that time period, because it will go out of date. And how can you make use of it while it's relevant? Certainly anything that you guys do, Employment Monitor, that has a shelf life. Your images are important in that often the first thing that people see. So we spoke about blog titles that will be seen in social media, certainly in our current templates. You can see the difference when it's dull, so make sure you use striking ones. Use context. So we spoke about context in titles, I've mentioned it before, in leading text. The same goes for your images, so people can see it at a glance without even reading what it's about. When you share, make sure you use a teaser that's relevant and fairly succinct. Do take care of your web library. You're not the only one that uses it, and do avoid duplication. Choose suitable images for blogs, and be careful with how you name blogs. It doesn't need to be 12, 13 words long, etc. Name it what it is, and do put space dashes. Actually, I'm showing you how to search for things quickly on Google. We spoke about alt text and title text. And last of all, we spoke about copyright. So why you shouldn't say images courtesy, because it wasn't their courtesy. You definitely didn't ask them for it and they didn't say yes. And what you can do to get those images. Are there any questions on what we spoke about today? Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, Tara. I think you want to go for a Galileo type look. Okay, that's fair enough. Then go for that. As I said, I used to use illustration. If that's what designers say, although Sarah has worked on this, that's why it looks so good. Do go for it, but at least make it striking and give it context. You are good to use it now and again. In terms of that Pokemon one, I would wonder what you could use that had people in it and still gave you the idea about Pokemon. So just, I suppose, use your judgment. So we do want to use, again, I think it was you, Yumi, you wanted to check on some images and you sent us over some examples recently, and they were exactly the kind of thing. They were striking, they were relevant to whichever blogs that it was, and they looked very Galileo-like, so they had people in. So if that's what design wants, a more human feel, then do go for that. But if you are really stuck, especially if you've got one about the company, so the Apple one, I suppose you could have someone on an Apple Mac